I woke up to the sound of my wife, Emma, moaning in pleasure. At first, I thought it was just a bad dream, a remnant of some unfinished sleep. But the sound, it was so real. I opened my eyes slowly, still heavy with sleep, and tried to focus on what I was hearing. My head was spinning, trying to piece things together. Then it hit me. Emma wasn't beside me. I turned to the other side of the bed, expecting to see her curled up, but there was nothing. It was empty. The sheets were still warm, but she was gone. That was when the sound reached my ears again, louder now. A moan, a gasp, but it wasn't coming from her. It was from a man that was definitely not me. My heart skipped a beat. I sat up in bed, the weight of confusion sinking in. Where the hell was she? Why wasn't she in bed with me? And why was I hearing these noises? Without thinking, I swung my legs over the side of the bed, my bare feet hitting the cold wooden floor. I was groggy, still trying to piece everything together in my head, but the growing pit in my stomach was making it harder to breathe. I decided to follow the sound. I wasn't sure why, but something told me that whatever was going on wasn't good. It felt wrong off. As I made my way down the hallway, I could hear them more clearly now. Their voices were muffled, but the sounds of their bodies moving together were unmistakable. My blood ran cold, but I kept walking. The light from the living room was on, and that was strange. I hadn't heard any TV or anything before, but now, there it was, casting long shadows against the wall. My thoughts were racing. I was afraid to look, yet I couldn't turn back now. I stood frozen in the doorway, staring into the living room. And then, there they were. Emma, in our living room, in our house, with some random guy. They were tangled up together on the couch, her lips locked on his, their hands exploring each other like I had never seen before. My mind couldn't make sense of it. This couldn't be happening. My wife, the woman I had trusted, the woman I had built a life with, was in front of me, letting some stranger touch her in ways I hadn't been able to for months. The man had his hands all over her, his mouth on hers, his body pressed against hers, and I was just standing there, watching. The betrayal hit me like a ton of bricks. I could feel my body shaking. My chest tightened, the blood rushing in my ears. My breath came in ragged bursts. I felt sick to my stomach. How could she do this to me? To us? To the years we had spent together? How could she disrespect me like this? For a moment, I stood completely still. My mind was whirling, trying to process the scene in front of me. But before I could do anything, before I could even think straight, the man's hand slid lower, and I knew I couldn't just stand there any longer. My body moved on its own. I burst into the room, my voice echoing like a thunderclap. What the hell is going on here? I demanded, my voice shaking with rage. Emma jumped back, her eyes wide with shock, her face pale. The stranger, looking like he'd seen a ghost, shot up from the couch. I could see the fear in his eyes as he scrambled to get off her. But Emma, she didn't seem surprised. Not one bit. She just looked at me, her expression almost bored. "Oh, so you're awake now?" she said, her voice dripping with sarcasm. She flicked her hair back over her shoulder, like this was just another normal day for her. I felt my heart lurch in my chest. She wasn't even ashamed. She wasn't even sorry. Her face was almost smug, like she had been caught stealing a candy bar, not cheating on her husband. "Did you enjoy your little nap, Tim?" she asked, almost taunting me. My blood boiled. This was the woman I had given everything to. And here she was in our living room with some guy I didn't even recognize, acting like none of this mattered. I turned to the man who was standing there, his face white as a sheet. I had no time for him, though. He was just a symptom of the problem, not the root of it. He was just a pawn in her game. I walked toward him, not caring about anything except getting him out of my sight. I grabbed him by the collar and yanked him up from the floor. "Get the hell out of my house," I growled, my voice low and dangerous. The guy didn't even try to argue. He just nodded like a scared child and bolted for the door, practically tripping over his feet in his haste to leave. I didn't care if he ran or crawled, as long as he was gone. But Emma didn't move an inch. She just sat there on the couch, smirking. "You're really making a scene, aren't you?" she said, almost in disbelief. "This is a little much, don't you think? It's not like we were doing anything you haven't done yourself." Her words hit me like a slap to the face. Was she seriously going to turn this around on me? Was she going to act like I was the problem here? I couldn't believe it. How could you do this to me, Emma? I asked, my voice shaking now, not from anger but from sheer heartbreak. How could you betray me like this? She just shrugged, her nonchalance cutting deeper than any insult ever could. It is what it is, Tim. You should have seen this coming. Those words, the way she said them, struck me harder than anything. Emma didn't feel guilty. She didn't even care. She had already moved on, and I was just left standing there, in the wreckage of everything I thought I knew. I took a deep breath, trying to hold myself together, but the pain was overwhelming. Don't think this is over, I said quietly, but with all the venom I could muster. She looked at me, eyes full of contempt, and just laughed. It already is, Tim. And that, in that moment, was when everything truly changed. I stood there, staring at Emma, unable to comprehend the person she had become. The woman I had married, the woman I had trusted with my heart, had just casually dismissed the devastation in my eyes. My thoughts were a whirlwind, but one thing was clear. There was no turning back. This wasn't some small mistake. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was betrayal. Emma sat there on the couch, arms crossed, looking at me as though I was the one who had done something wrong. It made my blood boil. She had shattered everything, and now she was acting like this was some sort of petty disagreement, like I was overreacting. Why? I managed to choke out, my voice barely above a whisper. Why him? Why now? After everything we've been through? She gave a dismissive shrug, her gaze cold and calculating. Why not? She said, as if the question was beneath her. You think I'm some sort of saint, Tim? You really think this marriage has been everything you think it is? Newsflash, it hasn't. And you haven't been the husband I needed. The words hit me like a physical blow, and I staggered back. My hands clenched into fists, but I kept them at my sides, trying to control the overwhelming urge to do something I would regret. What do you mean? I've done everything for you. I've been loyal. I've worked hard. I've been there for you. And this is how you repay me. Emma's eyes darkened, her lips curling into a smirk. You've been a good little husband, sure, but that's not enough anymore, Tim. You stopped being the man I wanted a long time ago. She leaned back against the couch, her posture too casual, like she was speaking about some trivial matter. You think I haven't noticed the way you've changed? You're always so busy, so distant. I needed more, and he gave me more. I felt like the ground had been ripped out from under me. My head spun, trying to make sense of her words. More, I repeated, almost laughing in disbelief. What more could you possibly need? I gave you everything. I gave you my love, my trust, my life. And now, you think I pointed toward the door, as if I could still see the man who had left in fear, could give you something I couldn't. She rolled her eyes. Don't make this about him, Tim. This is about me, and it's about what I need. You were never enough for me anymore. You stopped trying. You've been a shadow of the man I married. The venom in her voice stung. She didn't even seem to care about the weight of her words. She didn't seem to care about what she was tearing apart. She didn't even care that she had destroyed me. I can't believe this, I muttered, more to myself than to her. My mind was racing, trying to make sense of it all. Emma leaned forward, almost eager now, as if she enjoyed seeing me in this state of despair. Well, believe it, she sneered. This has been coming for a while, Tim. I've been trying to tell you, but you never listen. You've been so wrapped up in your own world, so busy with your work, you didn't notice when I started slipping away. And now, you want to act like I'm the problem? Get real. Her words twisted in my chest, a sharp pang of betrayal gnawing at my heart. How could she say that? How could she act like I was the one who neglected her, when it was she who had been hiding this from me all along? I took a step toward her, my body tense with fury, but I stopped myself before I said something I couldn't take back. I had to stay in control. So what now, Emma? What do you want from me? You've destroyed everything, and now you just sit here, acting like it's nothing. She stared at me for a long moment, and I could see something cold behind her eyes, something that made me shiver. I want you to let go, she said softly, almost as if she was talking to a child. I want you to accept that this is over. We're done, Tim, and there's nothing you can do about it. I felt like I had been slapped across the face. We're done. She said it so easily, so casually, as if years of our lives together meant nothing to her. I took another step forward, my voice growing louder. You think this is just over? You think you could just throw everything away like it's trash? My hands were shaking, and I had to keep myself from grabbing her by the shoulders. I'm not just going to walk away, Emma. You don't get to destroy everything and walk away without a fight. But Emma wasn't fazed. She stood up from the couch, straightened her clothes, and walked toward me with slow, deliberate steps. Her eyes never left mine. Oh, you'll fight, all right. But you'll fight a losing battle, she said coldly. You're too late, Tim. You were never enough, and you'll never be enough again. Her words cut through me, and I staggered back. The pain was unbearable, like a physical wound. I felt a deep, empty hole where all my trust, love, and hope for our future had been. She had torn it apart, piece by piece, and now she was telling me it was too late. I stood there, speechless, as Emma walked past me, heading toward the door. I'm going to pack my things, Tim, she said, not even looking back. I don't owe you any more explanations. I'm done. The finality of her words hit me harder than anything else. She didn't care. She wasn't going to fight for us. She wasn't going to try and save anything. It was over, and there was nothing I could do to change it. And just like that, she was gone. She walked out of the room, leaving me standing there, numb. My heart felt like it had been ripped out of my chest. All I could hear was the sound of her footsteps echoing in the hallway, growing fainter with each passing second. It was over, and for the first time, I felt completely alone. I stood in the living room, completely numb. The air felt thick with the weight of her words, suffocating me. She was really gone. She had walked out of our house like it was nothing, as though the years we spent together meant absolutely nothing to her. I felt like I had been slapped across the face, and yet I couldn't even react. It was as if the blow had left me speechless, incapable of doing anything but staring at the space she had just vacated. The silence in the house was deafening. I looked around, almost expecting the walls to speak, to tell me that this was some sort of sick joke, that Emma would walk back in through the door and apologize. But no, the door remained shut. The only sound I could hear was the pounding of my own heartbeat in my ears. I wandered through the house aimlessly, my mind reeling from the confrontation. How had I missed all the signs? How had I been so blind to everything that was happening right under my nose? The woman I loved, the woman I thought I knew, had been betraying me for who knows how long. And I hadn't even seen it coming. I stopped in the hallway, running my hand over my face, trying to gather my thoughts. I couldn't even remember how I had gotten to this point. Hadn't we talked about everything? Hadn't we promised to work through any issues that came our way? I thought we had built something strong, something real. And now, here I was standing alone in a house that no longer felt like home. I made my way to the bedroom, the place where everything had once felt safe. But now, as I stepped into the room, all I could feel was a deep emptiness. Emma's absence was like a shadow that hung over everything. Her perfume was still in the air, her clothes were strewn across the floor, but she was gone. She had just thrown everything away, and for what? For some guy she didn't even care about. I could feel the anger bubbling up again, hot and fierce. How could she do this to me? How could she throw away our life, our love, for something so cheap, so meaningless? I had given her everything, my trust, my heart, my loyalty, and she had repaid me with betrayal. I slammed my fist against the wall, the sound echoing through the empty house. I needed to feel something, anything, to break free of the numbness that had taken over me. But even that didn't help. It didn't change anything. It didn't take away the fact that the woman I had spent so many years with was gone, taking everything with her. I sank down onto the bed, burying my face in my hands. My mind was a whirlwind of thoughts and emotions. I was angry, yes. But more than that, I was heartbroken. I had trusted her. I had believed in her. And now all of that was shattered. I stayed there for what felt like hours, just sitting in the dark, trying to piece together the fragments of my shattered reality. I could feel the weight of the betrayal pressing down on me, suffocating me. There was no escaping it. It was everywhere. In every room, in every corner of the house, there was the reminder of what had been and what was lost. The sound of the doorbell ringing cut through the silence, startling me. I wiped my face with the back of my hand and stood up, my body stiff with tension. Who could it be? Was it Emma coming back to apologize? Was it that guy from the living room, showing up to make sure I didn't press charges? I walked to the door, my heart racing, unsure of what I would find on the other side. I opened it slowly, only to find a delivery driver standing there, holding a small package in his hands. "Delivery for Tim," he said, handing it to me with a neutral expression. I stared at the package for a moment before taking it from him. It didn't make sense. What could this be? I hadn't ordered anything. My mind was still reeling from the confrontation with Emma, and now this, some random delivery showing up at my door. I closed the door behind me and looked at the package, turning it over in my hands. It was small, wrapped in plain brown paper with no return address. What the hell was going on? I sat down on the couch, carefully unwrapping the package, trying to ignore the whirlwind of thoughts in my head. When I finally opened it, I found a small, white envelope tucked inside, along with a single photo. I picked up the photo, feeling a chill run down my spine. It was a picture of Emma, taken recently, standing in a hotel room, her arms wrapped around a man's neck, her lips pressed to his. I could see the smug grin on her face, the one she had given me when she walked out of the house. The one that said, "I don't care about you anymore." I felt sick. This wasn't some random affair. This was planned. She had been seeing this guy, and not only that, she had been so bold as to send me a picture of them together. It was like she was rubbing it in my face, showing me just how much she had moved on, how much she had thrown me away without a second thought. I looked down at the photo in my hands, my vision blurring with tears. I couldn't believe this was my life now. I had been so blind, so naive. How could I have not seen it? How could I have missed the signs? I thought I had been a good husband. I thought I had done everything right. But now all of that felt pointless. It felt like a sick joke, like I had been living in a dream while Emma was out there, living a completely different reality. I didn't know what to do anymore. I didn't know how to fix this. I didn't even know if I wanted to fix it. What was there to fix? The trust was gone. The love was gone. Everything I had built with Emma had been torn down in an instant. All I had left now was the broken pieces of a life I didn't even recognize. The photo still sat on the table in front of me, mocking me with its cruel truth. Every time I looked at it, it felt like the ground shifted beneath me, like the solid foundation of my life had cracked wide open. Emma was smiling in that photo, a smile that wasn't for me. It was for him, the man who had taken my place, whether he realized it or not. That's exactly what he was doing. I could feel my throat tightening as the reality of what I was looking at settled in. It wasn't just an affair. It was a replacement. She had already moved on, and here I was, left to pick up the pieces of a life I thought was real. I stood up abruptly, pacing around the room. My mind was a blur of anger, sadness, and disbelief. How had I gotten to this point? How had things spiraled so far without me noticing? I thought I had been attentive. I thought I had been a good husband. But she had been hiding this from me, lying to my face, all while I was none the wiser. I grabbed my phone off the counter, desperately trying to think of someone I could call. Someone who could help me make sense of everything. But then I realized, who could I call? Who would understand? Who could possibly understand the depths of the betrayal I was feeling? Everyone else would just tell me to move on, to forget about her, to let it go. But how could I? How could I just move on from this? How could I let go of everything I had ever known, everything I had ever loved? I dialed a number before I had time to think it through, the only person I could think of who might offer some advice. It rang a few times before a familiar voice answered. "Hey, Tim. What's up?" It was my brother, Jack, the one person who had always been there for me, the one person who had warned me to keep my eyes open when things with Emma had started feeling off, but I had been too blinded by love to listen. Now I felt like a fool. "Jack," I said, my voice shaky. "I need to talk to you." There was a pause on the other end, and I could hear him shifting on the line. "What's going on, man? You sound off." I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. "It's Emma. She's been cheating on me with some guy. She's been hiding it from me for God knows how long. And now I find out she's already moved on." I could hear Jack's sharp intake of breath. "Damn, Tim. I'm so sorry, man." I rubbed my forehead, feeling the weight of the moment. I don't even know what to do anymore. She sent me a picture of them together. It's like she doesn't even care. Like she's already replaced me. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. Jack wasn't one for words of comfort. He wasn't the kind of guy to sugarcoat things. And right now, I needed honesty more than anything else. Listen to me, Tim, he finally said, his voice serious. I know this is hard to hear, but you need to accept something. She's already checked out. She doesn't care about you anymore. I know you want to fight for her, but she's made her decision. And you can't keep torturing yourself trying to hold on to something that's already gone. I closed my eyes, trying to process what he was saying. But I loved her, Jack. I gave her everything. And you were a good husband, Jack interrupted. But she doesn't appreciate it. She doesn't respect you anymore, Tim. And you have to stop trying to make sense of it. There's no explaining this kind of betrayal. She's moved on, and it's time for you to move on too. The word stung, but somewhere deep down, I knew he was right. I had been holding on to the idea of what we used to be, but the truth was Emma was no longer the woman I thought she was. She had made her choice, and it wasn't me. I dropped my phone onto the couch and ran my hands through my hair. I couldn't think straight. The pain was unbearable, gnawing at me from the inside out. I wanted to scream, to break something, to do anything to escape the feeling of being utterly worthless, discarded. I had trusted her. I had loved her. And this was how it ended. I stood up again, walking aimlessly through the house, trying to make sense of the chaos in my head. Every room felt like a reminder of what was lost. The bedroom where we had spent so many nights together, the kitchen where we had shared meals and laughter. It was all gone now. Those memories were tainted. They were all just lies now. I found myself standing in front of the mirror in the bathroom, staring at my reflection. The man looking back at me was unrecognizable. I had always prided myself on being strong, on taking care of things, on holding everything together. But now I felt broken. I felt like a shell of the person I used to be. Emma had shattered me, and I wasn't sure if I could ever put myself back together. I closed my eyes, trying to calm myself, but the images kept flashing through my mind. Emma and him. Emma smiling, holding him close. It was like a constant loop playing in my head. I had to stop it. I had to stop the pain somehow. But there was nothing I could do. The damage was done. She had betrayed me, and I had to accept it. I had to find a way to move forward, to heal. But how? How do you heal from something like this? How do you let go of someone who was supposed to be your partner, your everything? The truth was, I didn't have the answers, and I wasn't sure if I ever would. The days that followed Emma's departure felt like they stretched into eternity. I woke up each morning with the heavy weight of reality pressing down on me. I tried to shake it off, get out of bed, put one foot in front of the other, but the truth was always there, waiting for me. Emma was gone. She had left me for someone else, and there was nothing I could do about it. I spent the first few days in a haze. I couldn't bring myself to do anything that resembled normal life. Every time I went into the kitchen, I could still see her there, making breakfast, laughing at something silly I had said. I couldn't stand being in the places we had shared so many memories, because now they only reminded me of what I had lost. Every corner of the house felt like a betrayal, like a reminder that my marriage had been a lie. Jack, my brother, had called several times to check in on me, but I didn't answer. I didn't want to hear any more of his tough love advice. I didn't want to hear that I needed to move on. I didn't want to hear that I needed to accept that Emma was gone. He was right, but that didn't make the pain any easier to bear. I didn't know how to move on. How could I? The woman I had spent years building a life with had just walked out without a second thought. She had taken my trust, my love, and crushed it in a matter of seconds. I had given her everything, and she had thrown it all away for someone else. I couldn't fathom how someone could be so cold, so heartless. A few days later, I received a call that I wasn't prepared for. It was from Emma's lawyer. My heart dropped when I saw the name on the caller ID. I didn't want to answer, but something inside me told me I had to. "Hello," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Mr. Tim," the voice on the other end said, cold and professional. "This is Attorney Harris. I'm representing Mrs. Emma Mitchell in her legal matters. I'm calling to inform you that she has filed for divorce." The words hit me like a punch to the gut. I knew it was coming, but hearing it from her lawyer made it real. It wasn't just the end of our relationship. It was the end of everything we had built together. The house, the memories, our plans for the future. It all vanished in an instant. I see, I stammered, my throat tightening. We will be sending you the paperwork in the coming days, Attorney Harris continued, his voice clinical. Please ensure that you review them promptly. Mrs. Mitchell is requesting an equitable division of assets, and she intends to move forward with this divorce as soon as possible. The world seemed to spin around me. My head was spinning, my heart pounding in my chest. A part of me wanted to scream, to tell her to go to hell. But another part of me, the part that was still clinging to some shred of hope, wanted to beg him to stop, to tell me that there was some chance, some way, to fix this. But that part of me, the one that still believed in her, was dying. And I knew it. I had to let go. I had to accept that this was really happening. Thank you for letting me know, I said, my voice barely a whisper. Good day, Mr. Tim, the lawyer said, and the call ended. I stood there, holding my phone in my hand, staring at the wall. My legs felt like they were going to give out beneath me. I had no idea what to do now. My entire life had just been ripped apart. The woman I thought I knew, the woman I thought would be my partner for life, was gone. She was filing for divorce, and there was nothing I could do about it. I walked over to the window, looking out at the street below. The world was moving on, just as it always had. People were walking by, going about their lives, unaware of the storm that was raging inside me. I wanted to scream at them, to make them understand that my world had just crumbled, that everything I had known was gone. But I didn't. I just stood there, watching the world pass me by. As the days turned into weeks, I tried to keep myself busy. I threw myself into work, trying to distract myself from the pain, but it was always there, lurking just beneath the surface. Every time I saw a couple holding hands, laughing together, I felt a pang of jealousy. How could they be so happy when my life had been ripped apart? I tried to reach out to friends, but most of them didn't know what to say. They all knew what had happened, but no one knew how to comfort me. I could see the pity in their eyes, the awkward silence when they didn't know what to say. I didn't want their pity. I didn't need it. I needed something more. I needed to make sense of this. One night, after a long day of pretending everything was fine, I found myself in the living room, sitting alone in the dark. The house was eerily quiet, and for the first time in a long while, I allowed myself to truly feel the weight of everything that had happened. I let the tears come, though I had tried to hold them back for so long. I had been so focused on trying to find the answers, on trying to understand how Emma could do this to me, that I had forgotten to take care of myself. I had spent so long trying to fix things that I had neglected my own heart. But now, there was nothing left to fix. The damage was done. I had to accept it, no matter how painful it was. The next morning, I woke up with a sense of clarity. I wasn't going to fight for her anymore. I wasn't going to beg her to come back. She had made her decision, and it was time for me to make mine. I wasn't going to let her define my worth. I wasn't going to let her actions control my life any longer. If she could walk away so easily, then maybe it was time for me to walk away from the past. It was time to rebuild my life, even if I had to do it alone. I took a deep breath, standing up from the couch. It was time to let go. It was time to heal. The days that followed my decision felt like I was stepping into uncharted territory. It was as if I'd been living my life on autopilot, numb to the reality around me, just going through the motions. Now that I had made the conscious choice to let go of Emma and everything we had, I felt like I was waking up from a long, painful sleep. But waking up didn't make the pain go away. If anything, it made it more real, more difficult to bear. I spent the next few weeks making small changes. I took down the pictures we had hung on the walls, pictures of vacations, anniversaries, family gatherings. Every single one of them had once represented our love, our life together. But now, they were just reminders of the woman who had betrayed me and the life that I had lost. I packed away the memories as best as I could, trying to create a clean slate. It wasn't easy. Every time I moved something, it felt like I was erasing part of myself. The home we had shared, the home I had poured my heart into, was no longer a sanctuary. It was a place of pain, a place where I was constantly reminded of how little I knew the woman I had married. I spent the next few weeks avoiding places we used to go. I couldn't bear to go to the coffee shop down the street where we had spent hours talking about our dreams. I couldn't walk past the park where we had taken our first walk together as a couple. Every corner of this town felt like it held a memory of her, and it was too much to handle. But as the days passed, I started to feel a shift. It was subtle at first, a change in the way I saw the world. Slowly, the pain began to dull. I wasn't numb anymore. I wasn't lost in a sea of confusion and heartbreak. I was slowly finding my way back to myself. It wasn't easy, though. I had spent so much time thinking about what I had lost that I hadn't even realized that there was still so much I had left to live for. The first time I smiled again, genuinely smiled, was a huge moment for me. I hadn't felt joy in so long, but one morning I woke up and felt the warmth of the sun shining through the window, and for the first time in a while, I felt a glimmer of hope. I wasn't going to stay stuck in the past forever. I wasn't going to let Emma's betrayal define me. I began going to the gym again. I hadn't realized how much I had let my physical health slip while I was drowning in my emotions. My body had been telling me that it needed attention, but I had ignored it. Now I was getting back into my routine, lifting weights, pushing myself harder than I had in months. With every rep, I could feel myself becoming stronger, not just physically, but mentally. The gym became my sanctuary, my escape from the chaos in my mind. I started spending more time with my friends, reconnecting with the people I had neglected. I had pushed everyone away when I was in the depths of my pain, but now I was starting to rebuild those relationships. I realized that I wasn't alone, even though it often felt that way. I had a support system, and it was time to start relying on them again. Jack, my brother, had been the first person to reach out to me after Emma left. He had been the one to tell me to stop torturing myself over her, to let her go. At first, I had been too angry to listen, but now I was starting to understand what he had meant. Jack had gone through his own heartaches in the past, and he had always bounced back stronger. I wanted to do the same. I wanted to be like him, someone who could rise above the pain and keep moving forward. One day, Jack invited me over to his house for a barbecue. It had been a long time since I had done anything like that. Gone out with friends, had a few beers, laughed, and just enjoyed life. I was hesitant at first. The thought of socializing still made me uneasy. I didn't want to face the world just yet. But Jack was persistent, and after a few more phone calls, I agreed to go. The moment I walked into his backyard, I felt something shift inside me. People were talking, laughing, enjoying themselves. The atmosphere was light, carefree, and for the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe again. Jack clapped me on the back, handed me a cold beer, and I realized that I hadn't felt this relaxed in a long time. I wasn't thinking about Emma. I wasn't thinking about the pain or the betrayal. I was just living. We spent hours talking, reminiscing about old times, and joking around. Jack's friends were welcoming, making me feel like I was part of something again. I could feel myself coming back to life. It wasn't easy. I wasn't magically healed. But that night, I felt like I was starting to see the light at the end of the tunnel. The next few weeks, I kept pushing forward. I started taking trips by myself, weekend getaways to places I had always wanted to visit. I went hiking in the mountains, spent a few nights in a quiet cabin, and just let the peace of nature wash over me. I didn't feel the need to share these moments with anyone. For the first time in a long time, I was doing things for myself. I was starting to understand that I didn't need someone else to complete me. I didn't need Emma to validate my worth. I was learning to rely on myself again. I was learning to be comfortable with my own company, to enjoy my own presence. It was liberating, in a way, to realize that I could still have a full and meaningful life without someone else in it. I didn't need a partner to feel whole. I was enough as I was. But it wasn't all smooth sailing. There were still moments when I would be hit with a wave of sadness, when the memories of Emma and our life together would come rushing back. There were still nights when I would lie awake, staring at the ceiling, questioning everything. But those moments were fewer now. And when they came, I knew that they would eventually pass. I knew that I had the strength to face them and keep moving forward. For the first time in a long time, I was beginning to feel like myself again. The man who had been left broken and betrayed was starting to heal. I wasn't there yet, but I was getting closer. I was finding my way back to who I was before Emma, and maybe, just maybe, I was becoming even stronger than I was before. The weeks after I began my journey of self-healing were difficult, but they also brought me a sense of clarity I hadn't expected. Each day was an uphill battle, but with every small step, I could feel myself regaining a sense of control over my life. The more I focused on myself, on my health, my mental state, and my happiness, the more I realized just how much I had neglected my own well-being during my marriage to Emma. Looking back, I could see how I become so absorbed in trying to make her happy, trying to be the perfect husband, that I lost sight of who I was. It wasn't that I didn't love her. I had loved her with everything I had, but somewhere along the way, I had forgotten to love myself. One evening, I found myself sitting alone in the park, watching the sunset. I had made it a habit to go there after work, just to clear my head and reflect. The warm, golden light of the setting sun washed over everything, giving the world a soft glow. It was peaceful, and for the first time in a long time, I felt at peace with myself. I had been searching for answers for so long, but now, sitting there in the quiet, I realized that the answers weren't out there. They were within me. I had been so focused on the past, on the mistakes I had made and the hurt Emma had caused, that I hadn't realized that I still had so much to give. I still had so much left in me. And that was the turning point for me. I wasn't defined by what Emma had done. I wasn't defined by the pain I had experienced. I was defined by how I responded to it, by how I chose to rise above it. It wasn't easy, though. The next few days were a mix of highs and lows. I would have moments of clarity where I felt strong and determined, and then there would be times when I felt like I was right back at the beginning, drowning in the memories of her. The hardest part was the silence that filled the spaces she used to occupy. The empty side of the bed, the quiet house. It was all a constant reminder of what I had lost. But the more I allowed myself to feel the pain, without letting it consume me, the easier it became to let go. I learned that pain was a part of healing. It wasn't something to avoid. It wasn't something to run from. It was something to embrace, to learn from. I started to see my pain as a teacher, guiding me toward growth, toward becoming a better version of myself. One evening, Jack invited me out to dinner. We went to a small, quiet restaurant that I hadn't been to in years. Over the meal, we talked about everything and nothing at the same time. Jack had always been the practical one, the one who saw things from a logical perspective, and I appreciated his straightforwardness. "You're doing better, man," Jack said, looking at me with a smile. "I can tell. You're getting there." I nodded, grateful for his support. "I don't know if I'm getting there, Jack, but I'm trying." "That's all that matters," he said. "You got to stop looking at it like you're broken. You're not. You're just finding your way back. It's a process, and it's going to take time." I sat there for a moment, reflecting on what he said. "You know," I began, my voice quiet, "I never really realized how much I lost of myself until now. I was so focused on making Emma happy, on doing everything right by her, that I didn't even know who I was anymore." Jack raised an eyebrow. "You're not the first guy to do that. A lot of people lose themselves in their relationships. But the thing is, you can't give someone all of you if you don't have all of you to give. Does that make sense?" I thought about it for a moment, then nodded. "Yeah, it makes sense." "Good," Jack said, leaning back in his chair. "Because you're worth more than just the guy you were in that relationship. You've got a lot to offer the world. You just need to remember who you are." For the first time in a long time, I felt a flicker of hope. The man who sat across from me was right. I was worth more than the hurt and betrayal I had experienced. I was worth more than the pain Emma had left me with. And I knew I had to start living for myself, not for her or anyone else. After dinner, we walked around the city for a while. The streets were quiet, the stars beginning to peek out from the dark sky. Jack and I talked about everything, old memories, our family, life in general. It felt good to just talk, to share the things I hadn't said in so long. "I'm proud of you, man," Jack said as we stood by a park bench, looking out over the city. "You're stronger than you think." I smiled at him. "Thanks, Jack. I think I'm finally starting to believe that." As the night went on, I felt a sense of calm settle over me. It was like I had taken the first real step in my journey of healing. I wasn't where I wanted to be yet. I still had a long way to go. But for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was on the right path. I wasn't doing this for anyone but myself. I was finding my way back to the person I had lost along the way. I wasn't going to let Emma's actions define me anymore. I wasn't going to let her betrayal be the thing that dictated the course of my life. I had the power to choose who I wanted to be, and that was exactly what I was going to do. The journey wasn't going to be easy, but it was mine to take, and I wasn't going to let anyone or anything stop me from moving forward. As the days turned into weeks, I found myself slowly, but surely, adjusting to this new chapter of my life. The pain, while still present, was no longer all-consuming. It didn't dictate my every thought, every action. I had begun to realize that I was more than the man who had been betrayed by his wife. I was more than the man who had been left behind. I spent more time focusing on my career and my personal goals, things I had neglected for so long. The office had become a place of productivity and personal growth. I no longer went through the motions. I was invested in what I was doing. I took pride in the work I was producing, and slowly, I began to feel a sense of accomplishment that had been absent for too long. The sense of purpose I had been searching for had been right in front of me the whole time. It was my work, my goals, and my dreams. And I had the power to make those dreams a reality. But no matter how much progress I made, there were still moments of vulnerability. There were nights when I lay awake in bed, staring at the ceiling, with the empty space beside me reminding me of what I had lost. There were times when I would walk past a couple holding hands, laughing, and I would feel that familiar ache in my chest. The world had moved on, but I was still adjusting to a life without Emma. One evening, as I sat at a local bar with Jack, talking about everything and nothing, I felt a shift within me. The sadness was still there, yes, but there was also a new feeling, something I hadn't experienced in a long time. It was hope, a quiet, steady hope that I hadn't realized I was missing. Jack had always been the one to push me forward, to remind me that I could do better than what I'd settled for. "You're doing well, Tim," he said, leaning back in his chair, a knowing look on his face. "I can tell. You're getting your life back together. And I think it's time you start looking forward, not back." I took a sip of my drink, reflecting on his words. "I've been trying," I said, my voice steady but laced with uncertainty. "But I keep thinking about everything that went wrong. I keep thinking about how Emma just walked away. I don't know if I can let go of that." Jack raised an eyebrow. "You're still holding on to the past, aren't you?" "I guess I replied honestly. I think about everything we had, the life we built. It's hard to just forget it all." "You don't have to forget it all, Tim," Jack said, his voice softening. "But you can't let it define you. She made her choice, and it wasn't the right choice. But you're still here. You're still standing. And that says something. You don't have to let her actions control the rest of your life." I let his words sink in, feeling the weight of them. The truth was, I had been letting Emma's betrayal control me. I had been letting it dictate my self-worth, my future, my happiness. I had allowed her to take my peace, my joy, my confidence. But I was beginning to see that I had the power to take all of that back. I spent the next few days reflecting on everything Jack had said. It wasn't easy to accept, but I knew he was right. I had been holding on to the past for far too long, replaying the same scenes over and over in my head, wondering where I had gone wrong. But the truth was, there was no answer to that. There was no explanation for her actions, no reason why she had betrayed me. It wasn't about me. It was about her. And that was something I had to accept. I began to focus more on myself, on the things I enjoyed, on the person I wanted to become. I reconnected with old hobbies, things I had forgotten about during my marriage. I started writing again, pouring my emotions into pages filled with raw, unfiltered thoughts. Writing had always been my escape, my way of processing the world around me. It was therapeutic, and in a way, it helped me begin to heal. The more I wrote, the more I realized that my life wasn't over. It was just beginning. One afternoon, I decided to visit a local art gallery that had just opened. I hadn't been to an art gallery in years, and I figured it was a good way to spend the afternoon. As I walked through the exhibit, I found myself admiring the paintings, the sculptures, the creative energy that filled the space. I had always loved art, but I had never taken the time to appreciate it fully. Today, though, something about the art spoke to me. It felt like a reflection of my journey, each piece telling a story of struggle, transformation, and beauty. As I moved through the gallery, I found myself in front of a large painting. It was abstract, chaotic, but beautiful in its own way. The colors swirled together in a messy yet harmonious way, as though they were fighting to find balance. It struck a chord deep within me, and for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was witnessing something that mirrored my own experience. I stood there for a long while, taking in the painting, letting it wash over me. In that moment, I realized that my life was like that painting. It had been chaotic, messy, full of pain and confusion, but it was still beautiful in its own way. And just like the painting, I could still find my balance. I could still find my peace. It would take time, but I had the power to heal and to move forward. As I walked out of the gallery that day, I felt lighter. There was a weight that had been lifted from my shoulders. I wasn't there yet. I wasn't fully healed, but I was no longer defined by my past. I wasn't the man who had been betrayed by his wife. I was the man who had learned to rise above it, to find strength in the face of adversity. The road ahead wasn't going to be easy. I knew that. There would be more moments of doubt, of sadness, of longing, but I was no longer afraid. I was ready to take on whatever came next, because I knew now that I could handle it. I wasn't broken. I was healing, and that was the first step toward finding myself again.